And welcome to another edition of South Texas Crossfire. This is Attorney Joe Flores reminding you to join us each and every week right here on KTMB with the Lopez family. Special thanks to Don Humberto Lozano Lopez. He passed away in 2011, but he's honored, he's venerated, and he's never forgotten. And my good friend Carlos Lopez, who always puts God first. And we have got our DM Productions, Dave, 563-0096. If you need any help, you call Dave to make your documentary. If you just have a burning desire to come out on television, KTMV will accommodate you, and that's what I love about them. But we are on to the justice system. You've heard from prosecutors, and now we're talking with someone who sits on the bench, someone who sits on a very tough bench on a district court, the highest courts around these woods, and that's in the 214th, and Judge Ina Klein. Welcome.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here. I can't believe 3.5 years have gone by since you've been here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think that you've done a wonderful job, and I'm not just saying that. I truly, truly mean it. I think that your court runs very efficiently, and I think that I have been in front of you, and you dispense out justice fairly. Sometimes it hasn't gone my way, but sometimes the person needs punishment, or not punishment, but rehabilitation. And so it's a tough job. Could you tell everybody a little bit about your education, training, background? I'm sure a lot of people are curious where you come from, you know.
Certainly. So I'm actually as much of living the American dream as anybody can say. My family and I immigrated here in the beginning of the 90s from Russia. We brought nothing. We brought 4 people, my brother and my parents, and built everything from there. I went to high school and college and law school in New England, graduated from law school, started out as a public defender, did some time in a law firm, civil law firm, and then found my way to Texas, sooner than later. And once I came to Texas and took the bar exam, I started at the DA's office, and I spent 6 years at the district attorney's office prosecuting all kinds of crimes, starting with petty thefts and going all the way to capital murders. I was appointed to be a juvenile municipal court judge in 2013 by the city council. Spent almost 4 years on the municipal court bench and was elected to the 214th District Court in 2016 and took the bench January 1st, 2017.
And on the bench, I know it was a tough election, and your opponent had been on the bench for a very, very long time. And taking on somebody that it's seated, it's not easy. But when you did take the bench, what were some, at that time, what were some of the most immediate things that you wanted accomplished, your goals as a judge?
There were 2 main issues. One, I wanted to bring a new attitude and a new judicial temperament to that court. And 2, I wanted to see if we could create the first in Texas felony domestic violence caseload.
And the domestic violence caseload, why here in Corpus Christi?
Because I think anybody who looks at the atmosphere here in Corpus Christi, and I think really anywhere in our country, can see that we're having an epidemic of domestic violence that's not being addressed or not being addressed adequately. When I started looking at the way domestic violence cases are handled, I found out that even though in some states for several decades the judges have been presiding over specialized domestic violence caseloads, in Texas we are the only court today that does felony domestic violence caseload from the beginning through the end.
It's a very complex issue, and you said it as Mr. Gonzalez had said, the district attorney, that it is not just a South Texas issue. It's everywhere, and it's in every class, a social class. Coming from Russia in the 90s, and I know you were very young when you came over, but comparing the court systems, comparing gender biases and things, What is the reality? I mean, do you see just as much gender bias or lack of in Russia as you see in the U.S.?
So you're absolutely right. I came here as a 14-year-old child, and now I'm handling these cases as an adult judge, mother of two teenagers. So it's a different point of view. I definitely see more gender bias here. I definitely see the race issue here. Domestic violence is, however, one of those things that doesn't really see a race issue. It hits white, brown, and black. It hits every zip code. It hits every town, city, top to bottom, every day. We've handled 700 domestic violence cases in 10 months in Corpus Christi. So the fact that it's 700 cases in one city should explain to anybody who is looking that it's everywhere.
In, say, are there, in your view that you've seen from the reports from social workers and probation and experts in the field, are there isolated cases at times of domestic violence, or does this tend to be just scratching the surface? People have come in after maybe 50, 100 arguments or more.
It's across the board. We're seeing generational violence where the grandfather was charged with it, the father was charged with it, the son is now charged with it. It's the learned behavior. We're seeing veterans that are coming with PTSD and reacting in that way. We're seeing people with mental health illness reacting this way because they're not adequately treated. We're seeing people with substance abuse problem reacting this way when they're withdrawing from drugs or on drugs. We're seeing teenage dating violence. We're seeing college dating violence. It's literally, when I say it's across the board, it's across the board.
Would you say in percentages, and I don't want to commit you to a certain percentage, but are the vast majority male on female, or is it female on female sometimes? Because we forget our society is an open society now. The LGBTA movement has really gotten traction, and I would ask, is it, do you often see same-sex domestic violence also?
The numbers that exist right now are definitely the highest for male abuser on a female victim. However, there's definitely a trend right now to show that there are more and more female abusers and the male victims are coming out. There's definitely a stigma against it, as I'm sure you can understand. I'm seeing more and more homosexual couples being involved in domestic violence, and that's even more of a complicated issue. A lot of these people have not even come out to their families that they are homosexual. So not only do they have to report that they've been abused or they are abusers, they also have to come out to their families and say, and I'm also homosexual. And depending on their culture and mentality, that may be a very difficult issue to address also. So this is not a simple bad guy defendant, good guy the victim kind of an equation. This is so multi-dimensional.
When you handle these types of cases on the bench, and I don't want to just dwell on domestic violence during this interview, but I think it's a very compelling issue. What choices and discretion do you have when assessing punishment, or say if somebody pleads open to you or is found guilty by a jury? What range of punishment is there?
And that's a good question. So again, it's even more complicated in this aspect. There can be a capital murder with domestic violence aspect to it. In capital murder, if somebody is found guilty and the state is seeking death, there are only two possibilities, either death or life in prison without parole. It could be a second-degree aggravated assault. In the second-degree aggravated assault, it's 2 to 20 and they're probation eligible. It could be a third-degree family violence with an element of impeding breath and circulation where somebody may be choking somebody. That's 2 to 10 years or probation. There's so many different possibilities. of how it's charged, of what's involved, so fact specific on every case.
Well, and sort of segueing into the violence, do you see a trend towards just more familial violence or drug abuse or child neglect? What are the factors that now zooming out contribute to the domestic violence that you see?
I think all of the ones that we just discussed. There is also a spike in social media aspect of it, and in putting things on social media, whether it's photos
Oh boy.
or other things. So you add social media to dating violence, to maybe teenagers, it could be a perfect storm.
As a public defender, you represented people who were accused. You've worked in the civil arena, then you were a prosecutor. So it's a sort of a global view. When you sit on that bench, it's a rare opportunity we have to get into a judge's mind. Talk to me about a typical day, a routine, how you prepare, what's going through your mind, to let people know what judges have to do. I mean, I'm not saying that you're in lockstep, but you do your own thing. But what do you personally do, and what is your routine before you prepare?
So the last 3 days I spent at Moody High School talking to kids about domestic violence. And one of the things they all asked is, what is your typical day like? And I have a standard answer: I have no typical day. One of the things about Corpus Christi District Court judges is that we're general jurisdiction. And so that means I may start my morning with a capital murder and then go into a multi-million-dollar contract dispute and end the afternoon with a child custody dispute. So the roller coaster of the day is one of the things that makes my job, to me, absolutely fascinating. I have no typical day, I have no typical schedule, and I love it. To me, it's one of the best, most exciting things about it. I definitely prepare for my cases. I'm still carrying a whole bunch of motions and briefs and folders home. That sometimes is the only workout I get in the day. But I lift those files and I study, and I guess I anticipate what the arguments will be the next day. But I can tell you that I really, truly never know quite what's going to walk through those doors and how the attorneys will argue and what the litigants, pro se, without attorneys or with attorneys, will develop during that day.
What's the best and worst part of your job?
The best is definitely that I feel like I get to help people. I get to give them an opportunity to speak, to have their day in court. And sometimes that's really all people want. They've been percolating on their case for so long, and they feel like they haven't been heard. And on this day, when they go in front of me, even if they don't get what they want, even if they don't leave in a position they would want to leave, I think most of them feel like, okay, the judge may have not agreed with me, but the judge heard me, and the judge agreed that that's my opinion. And I will tell them a lot of the time, I understand that that's what you're telling me. I understand that that's your opinion. I'm not necessarily agreeing with it. The worst part of my job is hoping that things will be okay and just wondering. Some of the cases are the ones that wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wonder if I've made the right call, especially in the custody cases. Is everything going to be okay? Am I going to turn the TV on and find out that I've made a mistake? The one thing that I can promise to everybody is that I never make a decision lightly, and I put my heart and all the knowledge that I have into every case I have.
Are there any judges here locally that you would maybe attribute some credit to as far as influencing how you are on the bench?
I think every judge I've gone in front of, It could be a positive experience, it could be a negative experience, but negative experiences are sometimes the best lessons we ever learn.
Very well said. I think that I was taught you may not like the judge, but you respect the robe and you stand. People stand and dress appropriately. When they say dress like you're going to church, dress like you're going to a funeral is now what I tell my defendants, because you never know how they dress for church nowadays. But we've got a couple of minutes left. I know it's hard as a sitting judge to campaign. So what I wanted to do is knocking on a couple of 100,000 registered voters' doors. We know these elections are won by hundreds, not thousands of votes sometimes. What would you like to tell the voters out there for them to remember? We'll be playing this all summer, and I know that you might have an opponent, and elections every 4 years for a district a district judge. What would you like to tell them out there?
I think people want to know that their judge is going to be consistent. I think they want to know that what the judge promises he or she is going to do is what they will do. I think what I promised when I was running for my first election is what I've delivered. I promised that I would bring a proper judicial temperament. I promised that I would treat everybody with respect. I feel like I have. I promised that I will concentrate on trying to see what I can do about the domestic violence cases. And for the last 10 months, we've been predominantly doing criminally the domestic violence cases. I've applied for several grants. We've received an $8,000 grant from the Texas Council on Family Violence, and I just recently received notice that we've been nominated and presented to the governor's office for a $127,000 grant.
Fantastic.
Waiting to hear what happens with that now. I'm there every day, ready to hear the cases. I'm the local administrative judge for the last year and a half, which means that any emergencies when other judges are not there are being addressed in our court. This afternoon, I will be hearing case for somebody else because this is an emergency. I work hard. I listen. I'm not afraid to work harder. They say that some of the most hardworking people are veterans and immigrants. That's what I promise to do.
Well, thank you for the time that you've spent with us. I know that you're very busy and it's going into your lunch hour, but I appreciate you educating the people about the bench a little bit, giving them a snapshot. One final question. Your staff, what do they do at besides everything? Could you be a little bit more specific? Your staff that work for you.
The absolute key to our success is the staff of the 214th District Court. They don't work for me, they work with me, absolutely, for sure. The court manager is the one who is scheduling all the hearings and is answering the phones. She literally runs everything and makes sure that everything is smooth. The bailiff in the courtroom is actually a veteran and a certified peace officer, is very proactive in terms of avoiding conflicts and diffusing conflicts. The court reporter, the magical fingers that takes every word down, she is amazing, and she's on time with all her records. The clerk who is assigned to us from the district clerk's office is phenomenal and is just so good about telling me any cases that need special attention. Probation officer gives us a probation officer who supervises people on pretrial. The same thing, very proactive. I think the key to everything is being proactive, not reactive. And the staff of the 214th District Court and everybody who's on loan from other department is just, I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to work with.
Well, thank you. Judge Ina Klein's running again for and seeking your vote for the 214th District Court. And I can tell you from my experience that what she says here is absolutely 100% true. That you may not always get the result that you want, but who does in life? Nothing is guaranteed. But you will be heard, and you will have the opportunity to do so in her court. And we want to thank you, Judge, for taking the time. And we're going to be playing this like Stairway to Heaven over and over and over throughout the summer, so we can introduce people that may not have had the opportunity to ever meet a judge in real life, and they can see them on TV.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much.